She literally said it sounds like popcorn outside. She said, "We're getting missiles left and right because many of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries have US Army bases." She's in Qatar. So, as you said, they like share a Gulf. And even though none of the attacks on Iran came from our bases, they're still going at it. Luckily, our military have been intercepting missiles from the sea, yada, yada. And they're basically telling them to shelter in place and they're not allowed to leave their homes. And she's like, it's a very scary time. And to be honest, I know Western media hasn't covered this enough for you guys to be aware, but you're a friend to me and I thought I would fill you in. And it's just like so heartbreaking. And I was like, how do I find out more? Like, how can I kind of intercept the censorship that we're probably getting? And I checked in on her today. She's like, okay, for now, we literally just got hit. They're trying to hit US military and civilian sites at the moment. I live 700 meters away from the US embassy, and we are pretty sure they just tried to hit it.
And if anyone else is feeling anxious and overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world, we empathize and we sympathize with you. This episode is to kind of bring light to how to navigate this information while maintaining your peace. Welcome back to the Overt Thinking Podcast, the show for women navigating fitness and health in a world that makes everything way more complicated than it needs to be. We're your hosts. I'm Kelsie.
And I'm Bri.
And if you're here, chances are you're tired of overthinking every fitness trend that demands us to shrink and leaves us feeling like we're failing at a system that never wanted to see us win.
And this podcast is your safe space for honest conversations, evidence-based guidance, so you can stop spiraling and start trusting yourself and finally become the version of you that you know and we know you can be. Today's episode is one that I think a lot of us are going to just feel in our chest because we're talking about something that doesn't really get brought up enough, largely because it is uncomfy and it's a little tense. And we also sometimes fall back when we don't know what to do. So, this is what we do: how to stay politically informed without completely losing your mind. And Kelsie, I have been wanting to sit down with you and really just comb through your brain about how you do stay so, like, specifically politically informed, but also how we can translate this into staying informed about fitness from research based and, trusted sources. So, thank you for being willing to share all your knowledge with us today.
Yeah, I won't pretend to be like an expert on everything that's going on in the world, but I do feel it's important for all of us to maintain some semblance of awareness so we can actually take action and also be able to have a seat at the table when these discussions arise. We are all adults. It is time to face the hard things and show up
Yes.
for everyone.
Here's something that maybe people listening might resonate with. If you also grew up in a household where we didn't talk about politics at the table, like we just didn't talk about it, then you are like me and you probably are feeling like the actual anticipatory fear of like not knowing what's going on is actually just as bad as being so informed that it's causing you detriment. So we want to both, one, help you find the right information so you can stay informed and not fall victim to the clickbait, but also how to do it in a way that fuels you and doesn't cut you down, get you lost.
Right. Yeah. And it can feel overwhelming, right? Like you're frustrated. You don't know where to search for information. You don't know what news outlets are important or valid. And you never know who to believe. Do you just Google it? Do you go on Twitter? You're just bombarded with everybody's takes and you're trying to piecemeal all the information together. And it's not that people don't care. I think most of us care deeply. It's that the information landscape is so overwhelming and so chaotic that a lot of us have just kind of quietly checked out as a coping mechanism. I'm guilty of that. And we don't even realize that we've done it. And I think there's this unspoken thing in the wellness and fitness spaces where we almost get permission to tune out because hashtag like protect your peace or something. We want to stay in our lane and focus on your health. And all those things are great. They're not wrong, but they can become a way of avoiding things that feel too big and too scary to engage with. And I don't want that for myself long term. And I don't want that for the women listening to this.
And that's exactly why we feel so called to talk about this today. And even though, yes, this is like a fitness and health podcast, we know mental health is a huge piece of that. And we know that neither you or I are afraid to do the hard things or to talk about the hard things. And we're capable of standing up to challenges. And with everything that's going on in the world, we can feel like it's just too much. But it's also frustrating to just not know what's true or how to actually even talk about it. Right. And it feels really embarrassing, firsthand experience, to someone's talking about something that had happened in the world. And you're like, mm hmm. Like, that is like, I have felt so personally victimized by myself for not staying informed. So for a lot of people, what's happening politically and globally is happening kind of to them, whether they're paying attention to it or not.
Right. Right. Just like your client who lives in Qatar, like that's happening right in her backyard.
And that is a client that I've worked with since she was 21 years old. I've literally grown up with this person virtually. I've never met her in person, and she's
Wow.
somewhere over there, right? But she is dealing with something that she knew that I would not get good insight or good information about. And that
Right.
just really pissed me off.
Even here domestically, like I have a client whose family lives in Minnesota, and there's so much with ICE that we don't see in the media because censorship or other various reasons. Like people are hiding people in their houses, and we don't know about it. That's alarming. This is why this is important to have this conversation. It's easy to tune out or not pay attention, but one of the most beautifully articulated arguments for why none of us are ever really as separate as we want to think that we are comes from Dr. King. And he says, it really boils down to this. All of life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. We are made to live together because of the interrelated structure of reality. Did you ever stop to think that you can't leave for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? You get up in the morning and go to the bathroom, reach over for the sponge, and that's handed to you by a Pacific Islander. You reach for a bar of soap, and that's given to you at the hands of a Frenchman. And then you go into the kitchen to drink your coffee for the morning, and that's poured into your cup by a South American. And before you even finish eating breakfast in the morning, you've depended on almost half of the world. This is the way our universe is structured. This is its interrelated quality. We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality.
That's just so good. It's so clear, it's so simple. It's not, abstract or theoretical. It's your morning routine, it's your coffee, it's the car you get into, it's the clothes you put on. And if something disrupts that, conflict, a policy, a humanitarian crisis, it's not just over there. It's literally right here on your body, in your life, and to your cost of living. I guess I think you think about work, like your access to healthcare, that's affected as well. And that's exactly what I felt like the moment this client had texted me. It's just like she heard these missiles from her bedroom window, and I had no idea. I was drinking my cup of coffee on my way to work, and she's like, I just got fired at. And so Dr. King telling us, and has been telling us for decades, it's not just how reality works. We are in this whether we choose to look at it or not.
Big facts. So the question isn't really, should I be informed? It's how do I do it in a way that doesn't destroy me? Which that's the whole episode today. And we're going to try to
Mhm.
have you covered. So let's get into the nitty gritty and talk about how we can spot misinformation. Because I think one of the reasons people check out, obviously, like we said, is not because people don't care. It's because we genuinely don't know what to believe anymore. Like you open your phone and there are 17 different versions of the same story, and half of them are contradicting one another. And you just think, what is even true? Who do I believe? I don't even know anymore.
And it's also not an accident, right? Like that confusion, that's by design. I've talked about this in the healthcare system a lot. Like health insurance is confusing because you'll keep paying for it because you have to. And when people are overwhelmed, like when you think about all the different like health insurances you can choose or like all the different news sources that you can choose from, we just like disengage. It's like information overload. We're already stressed out, burnt out, tired. And the last thing we want to do is sift through stuff. And when we stop, when we kind of like disengage like that, we also stop asking questions. So, the first skill, and honestly, one of the most important skills that you can build right now, is just learning to recognize when someone or something is trying to manipulate you. And sometimes we don't even know it's happening, right? Like, that's the best manipulators are the ones that it's so seamless and it looks all good. So, let's talk about the red flags and what are some of the things that kind of make you pause before you share something or form an opinion based on it.
Yeah, one of the biggest things for me is I check the emotional temperature of a headline, and this took practice, right? And it actually took, someone that I look up to for news reporting, and she's actually um, she was a middle school history teacher. She kind of displayed this over the pandemic. Like, here's the different news outlets displaying the exact same reporting, but different headlines to strike
Mhm.
emotions. And
That's
if
so
something is
helpful.
written specifically yeah, if something is written specifically to make you feel outraged or terrified, like it's designed to make you wanna immediately send it to someone, that's a signal to pause, slow down, not because the story is necessarily false, but because that emotional charge is doing work on you, babe. It's bypassing your critical thinking on purpose. One example of this might look like so if something is, let's say, left-leaning, it could say, "Families torn apart, the human cost of mass deportations," right? So then the right leaning might say, border chaos, how unchecked migration is destroying American communities. You can see how, like, the hard charge in USA type might be like, oh, this is obviously something that I care about. I can't have the country that I love being dismantled by immigration, obviously. Sure. But the
Sure.
neutral, which is going to be from like a wire service, we'll talk about that in a minute, might
Yeah.
say federal deportation numbers rise for third consecutive months, data shows. So
Mm,
obviously that's a little boring, right? But it's not striking
sure.
emotion.
It's like factual. It's like gets to the point. And another thing I question is like where did what I see actually come from? Because so much of what goes viral on social media is like a screenshot of a video of someone said something sometime. And it's like this game of silly telephone and there's no real factual context and there's no way to trace it back. So the original source or factual content is lost. And by the time it gets to you, it might be completely fabricated and twisted and turned around, and then, we're nodding like, "Yeah, that happened," and we don't even know what we're talking about. So how do
Right,
we
right.
how do
And this is
we
where
how do we do that? How do we get out of that trap?
yeah, I mean, there's fact checking tools, and these might become your best friend after we talk about these. So, there are 4 sites that exist specifically to investigate viral claims. So, you have something like Snopes, PolitiFact, AP Fact Check, and factcheck.org. I personally follow a few of these on Instagram, so they come up readily. So, like when we had the State of the Union, PolitiFact was immediately putting out little swipe posts that are super easily quick to digest, and it's going through pretty much every headline that he said, like how true is it, and it gives it like a meter, so you have like that visual representation. And again, they're very neutral. They're judging all sorts of walks of life. They judge Gavin Newsom, they judge Kamala, they judge, I don't even want to say his name, Voldemort,
Yep.
he whose name should not be spoken. So, yeah, if something feels off or seems too shocking to be true, just run it through one of these before you let it take up real estate in your brain.
And I know it kinda sounds like a lot of work to do all this, like, research, but it's actually really worth it and completely changes how you consume information. Some little hot tips that I have done is I will I'll follow these accounts, and then I'll favorite them. So you can actually, like, when you go to their profile, go to the little, like, bell at the top, and you can
Mm,
say, like, "Alert me every time a post comes in," or the most relevant. So you can kind of, like,
that's
favorite
smart.
your favorite ones. Another idea is if you kind of bookmark one post from each of your, like, main things, then you can just go right to your, like, saved posts, and then you can see, like, those profiles right away. So you don't have to, like, do a ton of research. If you, like, know something's going down, pop on Instagram, like you probably already were, and then go and find one of those accounts, and they probably have, like, a reputable outlet covering it that you're already following. So, one random website isn't reporting some huge thing and distracts you.
Right, right.
So we talked a little bit about how to verify information, right? Like if we know State of the Union's happening, we go on Instagram, but how do we know what to actually like look out for? Like let's talk about where we actually go for information because I think a lot of people either don't know where to start or they've been going to the same like one or two places their whole life and kind of like not really questioning it, or just know that there's more to be left to be desired, right?
Every parent going to Fox News as their sole source.
Right. Okay. And we might also fall into what's called the availability bias, where because so many people are talking about it, what I'm hearing must be true, like including our parents and including our friends and including people that we may share similar values and views with, but instead of it's not still not the most representative or accurate data, right?
Yes. And this is where I want to bring up something that genuinely changed how I consume media and news. And it's called the media bias chart. Have you ever seen it?
Mm-mm. No.
So the media bias chart is basically a visual map. So imagine like you have your axis, right? It's a visual
Yeah.
map of news outlet and it plots them on two axes, left to right. So it shows you political lean of the outlet and top to bottom, which shows the quality of journalism. So you could see at a
Cool.
glance, is the source reliable? Is it centrist? Is it leaning one way or the other? And it covers everyone from AP News to Breitbart to MSNBC to Fox. And it's made by a data analyst named Vanessa Ortero and her team, and they update it regularly. So we'll link it in the show notes.
Okay, so what I understand is it's not saying like don't go read left or right leaning sources, or like don't go necessarily like stop watching Fox News. That's what you gotta watch. But
I mean, maybe
um
do that.
I mean, maybe do that. Like maybe don't like completely deviate from all the things that you have informed you over the years, but it's just saying like know what you're reading, right? Know what you're consuming and knowing the lens it's coming through. Because even a slightly biased source can have excellent reporting, but you just want to be aware of like the frame, or if they're trying to sell you something, or if they're trying to persuade you.
Right. And some just have like high quality budgets. Like if you're a local Fox station, if you have a local Fox station, they have big budgets. Like Fox San Diego isn't a bad reporting. They actually have some of the best reporting because they have a huge budget. So it's not that like just because these outlets lean a certain way makes them bad. It just means, okay, maybe you also need another source. So let's break it down
Mhm.
practically. If you want just the facts with as little spin as possible, your go to should be, like I said earlier, a wire service. And a wire service means that they have a different business model other than like other news organizations. So they aren't funded by advertising, right? So other news outlets actually pay subscriptions to these services because they have the longest standing infrastructure. Think of like your local news reporting, right? So even Fox News or like, I don't know, what's like a ABC, right?
Yeah,
They
sure.
don't have the funds to send journalists to every location in the world. So they get their reporting from someone who does. And this would be someone like AP News or Reuters. So
Mhm.
those two have their own distinct websites. You're going to get very bland headlines. These are the outlets that like I said, other news organizations pull from. They're not trying to entertain you or provoke you. They're just reporting on what happened. So if your client texted you, this is happening in Qatar, Iran, you go to AP News or you go to Reuters and they'll report, they show timelines like 9 minutes ago, this is what's happening. 8 minutes ago, this is what's happening. And it's like in a timeline exactly what's going on. And another outlet that I just started recently following is called Ground News. The downside
Okay.
is they are a subscription based model. So they do have a paywall. They are $9 a month. And this site aggregates more than 40,000 news outlets and publishes summaries all in one place. It's really cool.
Wow.
Um, their value prop is actually the blind spot feature that highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side or the other. So, this could be a
Mhm.
tangible way to see your own echo chamber. So, if you think back to like 2020, right? Like a lot of news sources, maybe on the West Coast, were like, all the riots in Portland, everyone's uprising, Black Lives Matter, all this stuff. You could see the disproportionate reporting on certain activities. Another cool feature is that it provides a factuality score, so assessing reporting practices and helping readers understand how reliable a source is. So, this might be good for someone
Mhm.
like you, where you're like, I don't have the time to figure this out. Someone just tell me what to do.
Like, give me the skim of, like, actual factual based things that are going on politically. That's what this is.
Yeah, it's like, do you remember the books like Poker for Dummies? It's like news for
Yeah,
dummies.
that's literally what I need. Give me news for dummies. And if you've ever tried to read sources like AP or Reuters, they are a little dry, but like dry is good. Like you want dry because that means they're not trying to manipulate your emotions. And then you've got like a solid middle ground option like NPR, BBC, PBS NewsHour, and these all have a slight lens, but they're known for strong journalistic standards and they clearly label opinion versus reporting so you can make your own opinions.
Yep. And then, of course, you've got your big legacy outlets like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. I'm sure everybody has their own favorite. These all do really good investigative journaling, but they do have their own ideological leans. This doesn't make them bad, like we said, but sometimes you want to read across, and that is worth habit building. You wouldn't want to shoehorn yourself into one hole, right? You wouldn't want to only read things from Fox News, only read things from New York Times. It is helpful to know how others think and speak so you can approach with compassion and be a part of the conversation that they are having in their mind.
And I think it's safe to say that social media, TikTok, is not a news source. Okay. Influencers are not journalists. We certainly are not journalists. Podcasters like us are not journalists. But we can point you in the right direction because we do not let a 30-second TikTok be the thing that forms your entire opinion on a geopolitical situation. So if anyone is talking about large scale topic as black and white, that is your first and probably last red flag. But we will get into some more social media red flags in a second.
Yes. And the rule of thumb is opinion and commentary have a place. Sure, they can be very valuable for helping you think through certain issues, formulate your own opinions, but know that the difference between someone analyzing the news and someone reporting it, they are not the same thing.
Hmm. And so let's take a little turn for our fitness girlies listening to this podcast. And also because this hits very home for me. So we're going to talk a little bit about health information specifically. Those of you listening know that Kelsey and I are both fitness coaches. I also work for a concierge medical practice. So I think a lot of you listening, because we are genuinely in a very confusing moment when it comes to health information. And I don't say this to be alarmist. I do say it because it's true and it needs to be voiced. The landscape of who is considered a health authority right now is very tumultuous and, again, is designed to keep you confused, which we will not have. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it really is. And it's a little disheartening. But I think that what makes this particularly tricky is that health misinformation isn't new, right? We've always had it. The anti vaccine rhetoric has been around for some time, and now it's getting a lot more popularity because of social media, for example. But there's something different about when it starts coming from people who are at the top in positions of power, right, in the government, because then it carries this weight of legitimacy. We call it the expert bias that maybe these group of people haven't earned.
And we're not going to dance around it. Okay. We're talking about situations like RFK Jr. being appointed to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. And look, we're not here to tell you what to think politically. We're not here to persuade you. What we are here to do is talk about critical thinking. And one of the most basic tools of critical thinking is asking, what are this person's credentials? And do they match the authority they've been given? And why were they given this authority?
Yep. And the answer in that case for him is RFK's Jr.'s background he's an environmental lawyer and activist, which genuinely might be valuable, right? But it is not the same thing as being an epidemiologist or a physician or a public health scientist. And when someone without training starts making sweeping claims about vaccines, food safety, and or what's causing chronic illness in our country, you are allowed to ask for receipts. You are required to ask for evidence. That is your job as someone who lives in a body and maybe possibly cares about others.
Okay, before we get into who you can trust for health information, what is an epidemiologist? I don't know. Am I silly for not knowing what that is?
Epidemiologist studies like trends. I don't know the exact definition. Let me look it up.
I don't
Public health
know.
scientist who investigates patterns, causes, and effects of diseases and health conditions in populations to prevent and control outbreaks and improve public health.
Got it. Okay. I didn't want to breeze past
Basically,
that.
a data scientist for public health and disease, etc.
Okay. And I'm sure people listening to this also didn't know what that was. And we're not trying to, again, make more misinformation here. Okay. So let's talk about
Great.
who you can trust for health information. And the short answer is follow the credentials and follow the consensus, right? There's a little bit of nuance to everything. So your primary care doctor is still probably your first stop. Academic medical centers like Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins publish incredibly accessible and well-sourced health information written for regular people like us. Also, the CDC and NIH are still your most comprehensive federal sources for public health guidance. And it is worth checking those directly rather than waiting for someone to interpret them for you, because a lot of what gets shared on social media is still someone's take on what was said, not actually what was said.
Yep. And this is where the quote unquote do your own research thing gets complicated, because doing your own research doesn't mean finding a YouTube video or one Substack that confirms what you already believe. And honestly, not even doing your own PubMed, because most people don't have the scientific literacy to know what they're looking for. We have an episode on this, and it's probably time to do another one. But one study, especially if it's only in vitro, I've had this argument with someone online, right? They're like, well, it's in vitro, which means in cells, which therefore can equate to human beings. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. Like, you don't live in a petri dish. There are so many factors that, anyway, I digress. Actual research means looking at peer reviewed studies, performing these studies, looking for a scientific consensus across multiple research and institutions, not just one outlying study that went viral. One study does not make a consensus, and we see this so much in the fitness and nutrition space too. Someone will take one small preliminary study and turn it into a whole movement, i.e. peptides.
Oh my God.
That's a whole other fucking rabbit hole we can go down. But the
But
nuance
we do
on
have GLP-1s coming up. We are going to be talking about GLP-1s soon. So stay tuned.
Yeah. What's ironic is GLP-1s and semaglutides have piles and piles and piles of research. Anyway, I digress. And anyway, the nuance just gets completely lost when people start saying, do your own research, or I found a PubMed study, or whatever, this person on YouTube. There's an interesting thread floating around social media, and I won't say from what side, but some influencers have said, we can't find unbiased research to prove our point. And they're like mad about it, as if research is meant to prove your point. Research isn't there to prove anyone's point. Research is supposed to prove the point. Good research conducted by strong researchers are trying to prove their hypothesis wrong. It pressure tests the hypothesis, and when it fails to prove the hypothesis through scientific methods, then it deems the hypothesis to be true. So here's your challenge. Look for something that rivals your argument. Maybe it's keto is the best for fat loss. Maybe it's this peptide BPC 157 improves recovery. Read it and try to understand it. If it doesn't disprove your hypothesis beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the key, beyond a reasonable doubt, then you might be onto something. If it does disprove your hypothesis and you find yourself still wanting to believe that hypothesis, then you have to ask yourself the tough question. Why do I need this hypothesis to be true so badly?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're evaluating a health claim, whether it's about anything, and you name it, right? Vaccines, raw milk, red dye, food dyes, seed oils. Yeah, seed oils, of course. Whatever the conversation of the moment is, ask yourself, is this coming from a credentialed source? Is there scientific consensus behind it? And is the person sharing this profiting from it or believing it, right? Remember Game Changers or what is it? Game Changers, the vegan Netflix documentary?
Oh, yeah.
All the people who funded it were like big pharma. It's like, oh my God. Okay. But anyway, I digress, because it's just really a lot of this health information. Like, so many people even took that movie, like the Bible. They're like, I'm going to be a vegetarian now because my blood markers are going to go up. It's like, no, you just stopped eating McDonald's for every meal. And that's why your blood markers went up. Not because you were a vegan. You started eating nutrients. It's basically just a sales funnel, and someone tells you the system is lying to you. Here's the truth. By the way, there's a supplement that fixes it. That's not health information. That's just marketing.
And none of this means that the system is perfect. We all know that the American healthcare system is broken and completely fucked when you can't even access care. None of that is beyond criticism. Healthy skepticism is good, but there's a difference between healthy skepticism and just rejecting expertise entirely because someone charismatic on the internet told you to do so.
Yeah. And trust your doctors, especially doctors who are well integrated with other providers and have a big network. So ask your questions, get second opinions, and read primary sources when you can. And if something just sounds too simple or too conspiratorial, whether it's telling you everything is fine or everything is a lie, the truth is that it's almost always somewhere in the middle or more complicated or nuanced than that.
So, we talked about what to read, how to read it, but none of this matters if you're consuming news in a way that's slowly dismantling your mental health. So, how do we talk about protecting your peace? Let's talk about those boundaries, babe.
Fine. Okay. And I say this as someone who has absolutely fallen into the doom scroll spiral at 10, 11, 12, and then remembered why I couldn't sleep. Okay. It is a trap and it is specifically designed to be a trap, right? Things are specifically designed to keep you either misinformed or confused or awake and stressed out about being misinformed and confused. So these platforms like
Engaged and
social media.
outraged.
Yes, these platforms are designed to keep you engaged, and outrage and fear are the most effective tools that they have. So they use them.
Yep. So, the first thing worth knowing is that it is a physiological response, not a personal failing, if you are having this reaction. When you're consuming stressful news content, your body is actually registering it kind of as a threat. Your cortisol goes up, your heart rate spikes, your nervous system activates. And if you're doing that right before bed, you're essentially signing your own death wish at this point of not sleeping that night. Asking your body to fall asleep while it thinks it's in danger is not going to work.
Which is why the kind of like no news before bed rule is like just simple and impactful, right? Like if you wouldn't be watching a ton of scary movies right before bed every single night. If you are, we need to fix that. We need to talk to somebody about that. But like this is the same thing. Your body doesn't know the difference between a spooky scary movie and you reading the news because it is spooky scary. So give yourself at least an hour before bed that is completely news free or stress out Netflix free because just do no news apps. If we can just start there and like no doom
No
scrolling
new
social media.
news, no new friends.
Yeah, no new news, no new friends, no doom scrolling social media or news apps because the algorithm will literally find you. Okay?
The part that you were like, nothing scary before bed made me laugh because we've been playing the new Resident Evil 9 game together. Well, Seth has been playing and I've been watching. It's like a zombie horror game. It is the scariest motherfucking game. And I hate scary movies. I cannot. I will have nightmares. But for some reason, I love horror games because there's like a really good story. It's basically this like large corporation sent a T virus and made zombies out of people. And yeah, it's crazy, but it's really good.
Kelsie,
So this
no
is what I
1
watch
hour
before.
rule.
I know, but it's so funny because this is what I watch before bed and I will pass out on the couch as he's playing. And I'm just like, this is something to take the edge off.
My God, and you better not cut that out of the episode. You better keep that in there.
I will. But beyond bedtime, it is worth thinking about building an intentional news routine that instead of just passively absorbing whatever your feed serves you. This might look like one check-in in the morning with a reliable resource and one in the evening, maybe plenty of hours before bed. And then you close the tab, shut it off. You don't need to go there. You don't have to be reachable for the news every hour of the day to be an informed person. I would also say that you're not going to be able to do everything, right? You're only one person. So choose the cause that you feel most passionate about. For me, personally, women's health is my number one. I will always be the most outspoken here. That doesn't mean I don't care about everything else. It just means that this is where most of my energy is going to be invested. If you're a jack of all trades, you're going to be a master of none.
And there's something also really important about the difference between being informed and using the news to kind of catastrophize and like fill your brain with negative stuff. So just be honest about that. Because I think for a lot of us, especially anxious people like me, hello, us here at the Overthinking Podcast, we can slip into a little bit of a pattern sometimes where we're not actually like consuming the news to really understand what like and understand what's happening. We just kind of are like feeding this anxiety loop and this like dopamine and I just think it's worth being honest with yourself about and maybe as Kelsey said, setting a reminder in your phone to like check the news like a couple times a week if you are a highly anxious person. It doesn't mean to like not stay informed. That doesn't mean you're not staying informed. You're honestly by checking a couple times a week maybe being more informed than a lot of other people out there, and especially better informed if you take our tips and tricks from this episode.
Yeah. A really good gut check is to ask yourself when you're reading something, do I feel more informed or do I just feel worse? Because feeling worse is not the same as being informed. If you're spiraling, you've crossed the line that is no longer serving you.
Yep. And remember, you can mute and unfollow and curate your feed however you want. I unfollow and mute people all the time. And it's not the same as just burying your head in the sand. You are allowed to unfollow the account that's posting 17 panic inducing threads a day, just like you would unfollow somebody who's posting 1,000 gossip things that you want to be a part of a day.
Right? Right. You don't have to give these people access to your nervous system. And if you do start to feel the overwhelm of the big, scary, hairy outside, remember to keep your head where your feet are. One little practice that I like to do when I start to feel that pit in my stomach is I close my eyes. Try a few rounds of box breathing. So 4, 4, 4, 4. Pick out 3 sounds that you hear while you're doing this, maybe some smells that you smell. Notice your immediate surroundings and that you are okay in this moment.
I like already feel better hearing your voice say that. That was so rhythmic. That was so beautiful.
Did you notice how I like slowed down the tempo
Yeah,
a little bit?
that was
Yeah.
pretty great. And I think that that's a
Should we
good
we
reminder
have like an
that,
ASMR like meditation podcast
yeah,
episode?
I think maybe. But I do think it's worth, noting that when we are in fight or flight mode, the number one thing that what you're looking for is safety. And I think that you gave us a ton of great tactical tips today of how to stay informed and also like kind of keeping us safe by being informed. So let's bring it home. Here's what we want you to walk away with today. Being informed does not have to mean you can be engaged and even enraged and still be at peace. These are not mutually exclusive, and that is the whole point.
Yep. Know your sources. Use the media bias chart, which we'll post on our Instagram and in the show notes if that's possible. And maybe check out Ground News. You can go to apnews.com, Reuters.com when you want just the facts. Ask who's credentialed, who's profiting, and ask yourself honestly, is this informing me or is it just scaring me?
And this is the part that I really need to work on. So let's build a routine around the news instead of just letting it build one around you. Protect your mornings, protect your nights, and pick the cause that really lights your fire, like women's health. And go deep rather than just burning yourself out on trying to hold on to everything at once. And remember, none of us are separate from what's happening in the world. And staying informed is an act of care, but rest is part of the care process too.
If this episode made you feel slightly validated and slightly annoyed, mission accomplished. We should be demanding better, and our goal has always been to help you cut through the chaos for what actually works. Share this with a friend who needs this, and come chat with us on Instagram. We're at overt_thinking podcast, at Brianna Lamb, at Kelsie Michelle, and we're on YouTube. We will
Yes,
see
we are.
you
In the
in the
next
next episode.
episode.